My name is Rachel Doyle. I am 34 years old, and on the day my mother-in-law changed the locks on my own house, I was sitting 40 minutes away in a windowless conference room, approving a $700,000 mortgage for a family I had never met. I found out when my key didn't turn. I stood on my own porch at 6:14 in the evening, in my work blazer, holding a grocery bag with a rotisserie chicken going cold in it, jiggling a key that had worked that morning. Through the window I could see my mother-in-law, Diane, rearranging the throw pillows on my couch like she'd already moved in. My father-in-law, Robert, was in the kitchen, not looking at the door. And taped to the glass, at eye level, so I couldn't miss it, was a note in Diane's handwriting. "This is still a family home. Act like it." She brought a key change. I brought 11 years of paperwork with her name on none of it. If you've ever been locked out of something you built with your own hands, hit like right now, because you're going to want to remember this one. I need to back up. Not to that porch, to the beginning, because none of this made sense unless you understood the 11 years before it. I met my husband, Mark, when I was 23. I was 2 years into my career as a mortgage underwriter at a regional bank, the kind of job where you spend your whole day reading other people's financial lives, their debts, their late payments, their secret second loans, and deciding whether to believe the story they're telling you. It made me careful. It made me someone who reads the fine print before she signs anything, and someone who keeps a copy of everything, because in my line of work, the person who has the document wins the argument. Every time. Mark was easy to love and easy to worry about. Warm, funny, terrible with money in the specific way that people raised by anxious parents are terrible with money. He either spent nothing or he panicked and spent everything. His mother, Diane, ran the family the way I ran a loan file, total control, total oversight, and a story about herself as the sacrificing matriarch that she needed everyone to keep agreeing to. At our wedding, Diane gave a toast that lasted 6 minutes and mentioned Mark's childhood 4 times and me by name exactly once. I counted. I've always counted. 3 years in, we bought a house. A real fixer-upper, 4 bedrooms, in Mark's hometown, 12 minutes from his parents. We closed at $340,000. Both our names went on the deed. Both our names went on the mortgage. That part matters. Hold on to that part. That was year 1 of what I started, without really deciding to, calling the file. The file began as a manila folder in my home office drawer. Inside it went the first thing that needed proof, a text from Diane, sent the week we moved in, that said, "Don't get used to this. Houses like this need a real family in them, not just 2 people playing house." I printed it. I dated it in red pen at the top, June 14th, filed it. I didn't do it out of spite. I did it the way I do everything at work, because a pattern isn't visible until you write it down. Year 2, Mark lost his job. His company restructured, and severance ran out faster than either of us expected. That same year, my income went up. I'd been promoted to senior underwriter, a $14,000 raise. When our fixed-rate loan came up for refinancing that fall, our broker looked at both our files side by side and said what he had to say plainly. On paper, Mark's unemployment and irregular consulting income would drag our approved rate up by almost a full point. Mine wouldn't. "You could refinance in your name alone," he said. "Keep the rate low while he's between things. You can always add him back once he's got steady income again." I asked Mark. He said, "Do whatever gets us the better rate, you're the expert, not me." He signed the quitclaim without reading past the first paragraph. I read every page twice, the way I make every client I approve read every page twice. The refinance closed on October 3rd of year 2. From that day forward, the mortgage and the deed were in my name only. Rachel Doyle. Sole borrower. Sole owner of record. Nobody told Diane. It never came up. Why would it? Item 2 in the file went in that December, Diane's Christmas card, addressed to Mark and family, with my name left off the envelope. Filed it. Red pen. Dated. Year 3, Mark's business found its footing, consulting steady, income solid again. We never got around to adding him back to the deed. You don't rush paperwork on a house that isn't going anywhere, and by then I'd started, without saying it out loud, to enjoy being the one whose name was actually on it. That same year, we hosted Thanksgiving. Diane brought her own centerpiece because the house needed something warmer in it. She did not bring a card for our second anniversary, which fell 4 days later. Item 3. Filed it. Year 4, I made VP of Underwriting. It came with a bank press release and my photo in the company newsletter. Diane did not mention it once, not at the family dinner 2 weeks later, not ever. Robert, my father-in-law, said, quietly, refilling my water glass, "That's a good thing you did, Rachel." 6 words. It was the most he'd said to me directly in 4 years. I noticed. I didn't file that one. Some things you just keep. Year 5, we had our daughter, Iris. Diane came to the hospital for 11 minutes, held Iris for 4 of them, and left saying she had a headache from the fluorescent lights. The person who stayed the full 9 hours, who drove 40 minutes at 2 a.m. because I called in a panic about Iris's temperature, who sat with me in the pediatric ward waiting room without saying a word she didn't need to say, was Carol Alvarez. My old neighbor from the apartment I'd lived in at 22, back before I met Mark. No blood relation. She'd become, over 11 years, the person who showed up. Every time. Iris calls her Grandma Carol. Diane has never corrected that, but she has never liked it either. Item 4, Diane's absence from Iris's hospital room, 4 minutes recorded, timestamped by the nurse's chart, which I still have. Years 6 and 7 blurred into the same rhythm. A snub at a family reunion, seating me at the end of the table nearest the kitchen door. Filed it. A birthday dinner where my seat wasn't set at all. I stood in the doorway for exactly the 7 seconds it took someone to notice and grab an extra chair. 7 seconds. I counted. Filed it. And each year, something quietly kept building on our side that had nothing to do with them. Mark's business hit its first 6-figure year. I was promoted again, this time to regional VP. Iris started kindergarten reading 2 levels ahead. None of it announced. None of it needed announcing, until it did. That brings me to this year. Year 11. The year the numbers changed in a way that couldn't stay quiet. In March, the bank profiled me for a regional business feature, Women Leading Lending in the Tri-State Area, with my photo, my title, and, because the reporter asked and I answered honestly, a mention that I'd personally hold the mortgage on our family home, which I'd used as an example of financial independence for other women in the industry. It ran online. It ran in print. It ran exactly where Diane's book club friend, Pat, happened to see it. That was step 1. Pat mentioned it to Diane at Bridge Club. "Did you know Rachel owns that whole house outright, in her name?" Diane, by her own later admission, hadn't known. Step 2, within a week, Chelsea, Mark's younger sister, had looked me up. LinkedIn views from an account with no photo, 3 days running. I get an alert for every view. I always have. Step 3, family gossip started reaching me sideways, the way it does, Mark's cousin mentioning, at a cookout, "Your mother's been asking a lot of questions about you two lately." Step 4, in April, Mark's cousin Denise, who is kinder than she is careful, forwarded us a screenshot from the family group chat, "Mom's Girls Only," by accident. It read, in Diane's own words, "If the house really is only in her name, we need to talk to Mark about protecting the family's interest before anything happens to it." 61 words, 0 mention of me by name. I read it twice. I filed it, the first digital item, printed anyway. Red pen. Dated April 9th. Step 5, Chelsea called me, out of nowhere, in May, for the first time in maybe 2 years, wanting to reconnect, just us. Over coffee, she asked, almost lightly, how the refinance had worked exactly, whether Mark's name could easily go back on, whether the house had any equity built up by now. I answered every question honestly and specifically, because that is who I am, and I noted, afterward, that she'd taken a photo of the parking lot behind my shoulder that happened to frame the house 2 streets down, the one we were thinking of buying as a rental. Filed it. Step 6, in June, Diane texted me directly for the first time in what must have been 8 months. We should all get together more. Family is family. 19 words. No apology inside them, anywhere. Filed it. Step 7, and the last step, is the one that ends with a note taped to my own window. On a Thursday in July, while I was at work, Diane and Robert drove over, let themselves in with the spare key we'd given them for emergencies 11 years ago, and had the locks changed by a locksmith named Gary from Value Lock and Key, whose invoice, I would later learn, Diane paid for with cash specifically so there'd be no card record. She brought a folder of her own, a single typed page, listing what the family was owed, that Mark's name be restored to the deed immediately, that the house be recognized as the family home, not Rachel's personal asset, and that we contribute $40,000 toward Chelsea's upcoming wedding the way family should. That's the porch. That's where I started. If any of this sounds like your family, I want you to comment one word below, just the word filed, so I know I'm not the only one who kept receipts. I didn't argue on the porch. I didn't raise my voice. I called Gary myself, got a new key cut inside 40 minutes because I am, apparently, a very good customer of Value Lock and Key at this point in my life, and I let myself back into my own house. Diane was still there when I opened the door. So was Robert. So, it turned out, was Mark, who'd been called over separately and looked like a man standing between two trains. I set the chicken down on the counter. I did not raise my voice, not once, not for the whole conversation that followed. Underwriting teaches you that the person who stays calm is the person the numbers believe. Diane went first, because Diane always goes first. She read her list aloud, like a formal grievance. Mark's name on the deed. Recognition of the house as family property. The $40,000, itemized down to the venue deposit and the flowers. When she finished, I asked her one question. Diane, whose name is on the mortgage? She said, with total confidence, Mark's. Obviously. It's his family home. I went to my office and came back with a folder considerably thicker than hers. I set it on the counter between us. Not thrown. Set down, the way you set down evidence you already know will hold. Refinance agreement, October 3rd, year 2, I said, sliding it across. Sole borrower, Rachel Doyle. Deed transfer, same date, sole owner of record, Rachel Doyle. This house has never, for the last 9 years, had Mark's name on it in any legal capacity. Which means it has certainly never had yours. She actually laughed, first, the theatrical kind, a short, disbelieving sound meant for an audience. This is absurd. This is our family home. It's my mortgage, I said. I've paid it every month for 9 years. I have the statements if you'd like to see all 108 of them. Then I opened the file. Not to embarrass her, I want to be clear about that, but because after 11 years of collecting proof one item at a time, I finally had a reason to use it in order. I went in date order, the way I'd always filed it. The Christmas card with my name left off. The empty seat at the birthday table, 7 seconds, timestamped by nothing but memory that had never needed correcting because nobody in that room disputed it. The hospital chart with Diane's 11 minutes on it. The screenshot from Mom's Girls Only. 61 words. I read it aloud. Diane's face did something I'd genuinely never seen it do before. It went, for about 2 seconds, unguarded. I was afraid, she said, quietly, not to me exactly, more to the counter. I was afraid you'd already taken him from us, and I didn't want to be the last one to know it. 2 seconds. Then it closed back up, and she said, louder, after everything we've done for this family. You did 11 minutes, I said. Carol Alvarez did 9 hours. Nobody in that kitchen had an answer for that one. Robert had been quiet the whole time, the way he'd been quiet for 11 years. But when I got to the item about the water glass, the 6 words he'd said to me the year I made VP, he looked up. I remember saying that, he said. Just that. Then, after a pause that felt longer than it was, I should have said more, over the years. I know that. It wasn't an apology exactly. But it was more than he'd offered in a decade, and I decided, right there, it was enough to build something small on later, not now, not all at once, but a door left open a crack instead of slammed. Chelsea texted Mark that night, once she heard how it had gone, one line, "Tell Rachel congrats on winning, I guess." I didn't reply. Some messages are their own answer. Diane left that evening without agreeing to anything and without apologizing for the locks. She hasn't asked for the $40,000 again. She also hasn't apologized. I don't know yet what she'll do with what she heard in that kitchen, whether the 2 seconds where she said "I was afraid" out loud will turn into anything, or whether it'll get filed away the way she files away everything that's inconvenient to remember. The next move is hers. Robert calls now, every other week, short calls, 10 minutes, nothing deep. We haven't invited him over yet. We might, eventually. Some doors you close all the way. Some you just leave unlocked, and wait to see who walks through them on their own. Here's what I've learned, after 11 years of a folder that started as one printed text message: family was never the people whose name is on the deed. It's not blood, and it's not who raised you, and it's not who shows up to say the right thing at the wedding toast. It's whoever hands you a chicken sandwich in a waiting room at 2 a.m. and doesn't ask you to explain why you're crying. Diane had 11 years to be that person. Carol Alvarez did it in one night, for free, with no name on anything at all. If you've got a Diane in your life, or, better, if you've got a Carol, tell me about them in the comments. And if this story meant something to you, subscribe, because I've got more files where this one came from.